Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next session in our 12 Days of Copilot series. Today is day 5, Insights That Inspire. Explore what's possible now as Copilot works alongside Excel and Power BI to bring clarity to your data and help you move faster. So really looking forward, obviously, to go through this. I see a lot of chat on hot chocolate versus hot cocoa versus eggnog. So great to see everyone posting with that. And hopefully today you get some tips and tricks here to learn a little bit more about this. Just some real quick housekeeping. So first off, a copy of the recording will be here. Make sure you're commenting. We'll try to incorporate that as we go through this, obviously. And at the end, we're going to do a gift giveaway, which is a pretty cool one this year, in my opinion. Also, what I want to just kind of highlight is this week's charity spotlight, which is Feeding America. So obviously, we've had this conversation a couple times before. Make sure to pass this around. For every participant, we're donating obviously $5 per attendee for these non-for-profits. So if you want to give your favorite organization a little bit more oomph or kickback, so to speak, make sure to share this information so that they attend this session as well. With this today, we're going to be going through obviously some of the Power BI and Excel capabilities, and I wanted to bring Mick on here to really go into a little bit more detail on the Power BI portion of it, because there's just a lot you can do with it, and framing what those capabilities are is really important. So we're going to make sure we present that, and then I'm going to be covering a little bit more of the Excel capabilities today as we use Python and data frames and all that type of stuff to really navigate through some of the data that's there. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our Copilot and Power BI overview. And Mick, I want to welcome you to the stage and let you have at it.
Hey, brilliant, Scott. Thanks for the intro. And yeah, excited to be here. And as Scott said, I mean, Copilot, as we all know, that's why we're here. There's a lot of different things going on with Copilot, and especially in the Power BI and the data space, it's one of those areas that is just booming. And there are so many things changing every day, and even, how Microsoft is approaching it. So obviously don't have a whole ton here, so we're just going to do some slides just to do a quick overview of what it can do, how it's kind of managed, some of the realities of it, and some of the quick pitfalls just kind of avoid as your organization and you are getting into Copilot, specifically in the Power BI Fabric space. So with that, I've got a little, diagram up here just to have a little summary of, okay, Copilot and Power BI, what does it actually mean? As we know, there's Copilot, or there's Power BI mobile app, there's Power BI desktop, and then there's reports, and there's semantic models, and there's notebooks, and all that other kind of stuff going on. So really what it means is, at its core, there's Copilot at all. All of it's typically activated from a little Copilot button in the top right corner, whether in your report or whether in the Power BI desktop mode. And you can utilize it to ask data questions. You can have it write some DAX for you. You can have it generate summaries of reports for you. Like, this is 10 pages. I don't know what's on here. What is this here for? You can do all of those really kind of cool things, and it's all built off of that user permission, and actually built now off of your Fabric SKU when it comes to capacity. Or if you guys are still on the premium workspaces, that's the other way that you can use that capacity. As we know, the premium workspaces are no longer being sold. So if you're looking to go down that route and you don't have the premium capacity for the BI workspace, you will have to go down the Fabric or premium per user there. And that's obviously a whole nother conversation when it comes to licensing and using that stuff. But that's where it comes from. One quick caveat, as I do say that, as you do deploy, it is a full workload. So there's no limiting Copilot to, just semantic models or just BI desktop or anything like that. It is a full capacity when you activate it there in either the BI workspace or inside of Fabric. So one just caveat right off the bat, I would highly recommend that you utilize security groups and some of that kind of stuff to contain deployment before all of a sudden your entire capacity gets used up by Copilot with everybody playing around. So one quick caveat there. So now really we've got this slide, but now what does it mean for real life? What does it actually do here? So what do we got here? Scott, if we can move to the next one. We have just a quick summary again, how it actually works and what it actually does. So like I said, there's a little Copilot button in the top right hand corner of the ribbon inside of Power BI desktop, as well as the reports. You click on that and it opens up a little pane. What's really cool with Copilot inside of Power BI is it pulls in all of that context, all of those different, data points, elements, the semantic model, the labels, all that kind of stuff into there, so you can actually really do a powerful live Q&A with the data. Now, it is similar to the Power BI Q&A feature that was there in the past, but as we know, these LLMs are just a little bit more powerful, especially when it comes to language processing. So it gives a little bit better, back and forth and a little bit better insight into the data than the old Q&A did give. Now, also, it can create the visuals inside of Power BI, say, hey, I want to see a visual from, this data set, or, give me this insight. How can we do that? It can do that. Again, caveats are coming on the next page with some of the things to be careful of there, but that's absolutely brilliant. What it does for those end users is it just accelerates the insights that they can get from the data quicker than what was possible in the past. Now, from the development side, oh man, it opens so many doors. So what you can do is you can have it generate frameworks for DAX and report pages, say, hey, I have this data set. These are the, key insights that I'm trying to convey to the end user. And it can generate a, frame for a frame for the report page or multiple pages and all these kinds of things, and build that framework out so you have something to start off of instead of having to do all of that like baseline stuff from scratch. I've used that a lot. It is really good when done right, and giving it that right feedback and, pointed questions and insights that you're trying to get out of the data. Another really cool thing is the commenting of code and semantic models. That is something that we all know can sometimes get put to the wayside a little bit. And what we can do is we can give it a semantic model, or we can give it code and say, hey, can you just throw some comments on here so that we can, make it readable for other people too, instead of just me. And it does a great job. Obviously, reread it, double check it. But it's a great thing there to get that going, and gets the commenting and metadata stuff going on real quick. And finally, what I also really like to point out is the feedback on measures. So as we know, it's a back and forth when you work with Copilot and all of these models. And what you can do is you can say, hey, here's my measure. This is what I did. Are there any things that I should really pay attention here to improve performance? Or is this actually doing what I want it to do? Or, again, are there different ways to look at this that might be a little bit more performant? Or am I reusing maybe a different measure for this? It gives context to all of that inside of your report and your data model. So it's really good when kind of just having that feedback and having that extra, wall to bounce ideas off of. So that's kind of a little bit of what it actually does. And then finally, points of caution, just being careful with it. The model's old. Just being realistic, what it was trained on is not necessarily the latest and greatest. I know I don't know if you guys know this, but Microsoft puts updates on their products a decent bit, like every day. And some of the newer functions and some of those things, they just don't work as well with. So just be aware that some of the functions and some of the things that it does give you, there is some caveats if you're trying to use some of the new functionality that's been recently released. Recently released, in my experience, has been about 6 quarters. So it still works. There's just not obviously as much data and as much backing there as you're utilizing the new functions. The other thing, column titles. Data is data. There are things like name or amount or description that are used in a ton of different tables, whether that's Microsoft products or not. So one thing that you do have to be careful of is you don't want to get into the problem of, hey, what's my total sales amount? Oh, shoot, are we talking from the invoice table? Are we talking from the sales table? Are we talking from the opportunity table? So really just make sure that you're giving those descriptions and just double checking, being wary of what it's giving you, especially if you're using some of those columns that might be, used in a few different tables. And with everything, there's a fine balance of giving it too much info and, tailoring it in and, just giving it exactly what you want. And, then all of a sudden it doesn't get the creative freedom to, maybe think a different way than you were, but also obviously not giving it enough where all of a sudden it's going to a different table that you don't necessarily want it to. So there's my absolutely blitzed through 6 minutes of Copilot in Power BI. If you guys want to, hear more, see more demos, whatever else, obviously we are here. I am here. But with that, back over to Scott to show you in Excel.
Sounds great, Mick. Really appreciate it. I mean, it is pretty amazing what they've been able to do with this. We know that large language models, for example, are really good at word calculating. They're not the best at math, right? And so it's really interesting to see this combination, right? Where, for example, technically on the back end, there's a lot in that semantic model that drives obviously the structure that then Copilot uses. So I think one of the big things I just want the audience to understand is that it does a really good job if you do a good job setting up your semantic model. But if you don't
Absolutely.
do a good job there, right? If you're just like everyone's always going for the holy grail of tell me all my things in business so that it tells me everything. It's like we're not there yet. We're there in some areas, but not there in all of them. So once again, it's a good balance that you need to really think through with it. I guess with that, Mick, I'm going to show just like an example then, like Excel. So if we go to Excel, just as a quick example here, and I've got an inventory list with highlights that I'm actually going to go ahead and just open here just to kind of show this type of a capability when it comes to Copilot. Because when we think about Copilot, even inside of Excel, we're not thinking of Copilot doing math. I think some of us are. We think it does it, but really, if you look at even the Copilot structure inside of Excel or even some of the other apps, it's about automating actions, understanding different information like formulas. But once again, you just have to be really careful because these large language models that we use, they're not math calculators. You've got to really be cautious in how you interact with these because there's nothing more frustrating to an end user to say total it up by something, for example, inside of a chat experience and then have it have the wrong total, right? And once again, that's just something you got to learn how to use the tool before you start then, telling the tool to do something that it can't do basically. So just as an example, if I go to my app skills here, what we're going to see is it's going to say, hey, go ahead and turn on autosave because remember with Copilot, typically we're saving information basically in the cloud to interact with it. So you can see here as I go through this that I'm adding my sensitivity labels, all the different types of rules and capabilities are there. And what I can do is I can use Excel to go faster to tackle some of my tasks, right? So an example might be create a unit cost field that is 20% lower than the unit price field, right? So using Copilot to actually go through and automate some of these different types of actions that you have is just a really good use case. Once again, we're using natural language to interpret the action that we want it to take, and then we're taking that particular action. And what you'll see here is that Copilot will go through a lot of thought basically to be able to build that out and then add that then into the actual list here. Now, in the interest of time, what I'm going to do, team, is I'm going to cheat just a little bit. You can see here, it does the unit price by 0.8. I can insert that column, and then we have it here. But remember, when we start going even deeper with this, we start thinking through, okay, well, I want to do some additional things with this data. So this is another example where I pre-did this. Once again, I've been in demos for most of my life, so I know what we got to do to go fast here. And then what I did is I said, let's go into advanced analysis mode and let's think deeper. So what deeper does is it allows us to take this data, and then what happens is that the large language model is scripting the actions to take against the data using the reasoning models like the O3 mini reasoning model to then generate, for example, these different data frames using Python. So instead of having Copilot do the totaling, Copilot does the orchestration of the totaling to basically get us to some of those values that we may need. And just as an example, if I want to, for example, here, we'll go down just a little bit more, and I have some key metrics that I said, go ahead and analyze, for example, the unit price that's related to it, or the categorical patterns that we see inside of here. And what I can also do is go a little bit further down and say, hey, you know what? Generate, for example, a standard deviation pane inside of here that identifies, for example, my distribution levels of the reorder point and what that distribution is, or even scatter plots that we can do and add to it. As you can see right here, that I can add those results then to a sheet that has, for example, that value then inside of here. So we can see, for example, then this mix of scatter plots and what it will use Python to go through and then update it. So once again, there's just a lot of great capabilities that are here that you kind of just got to get accustomed to as you go through and use use it to really drive, for example, some of that advanced analysis or some of that graphical representation of data that's inside of the environment. Now, with that, I wish we had so much more time to go through this, but we don't. Obviously, if you want to dive deeper, make sure you reach out to us. We would love to show you a much more tailored demo, obviously, to your environment, and even teach you a little bit more on how to use with Excel with it.